Tommy,
Dude, man.
shaking, brother.
You know, you hit record because you knew we were talking about shit and we were going to get into it.
Yeah, totally. Well, like that. It's funny because, like, I feel like it. One of the greatest things that I love about what you and I do here is that, like, at no point would we ever not have something to talk about.
No,
So
you were like literally like, we don't have a guest.
Whenever.
It's been forever. Let's just go.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, well, what aren't we gonna like?
I mean, like, literally, we're talking about antidepressants slowing aggressive brain tumor growths and stuff.
Can we start there real quick, dude? How crazy was that fucking article, man?
I just, it's so nuts to me that, like, we're just stumbling upon information sometimes that, like, could radically change people's lives. It's just like, that was like a happy accident that was found, right?
Well, so they basically just, so that article was crazy because, like, they had really no motivation outside of curiosity to see what happens, like, with this, right?
Well, like, look, these cancers are like that, right? They're so aggressive that you throw anything at it and you just kind of see what happens.
Right. And so it turns out this, like, semi-approved antidepressant ends up basically putting the full brakes on glioblastoma, which weirdly I know more than 0 people that have died from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so
normally when they have that specific brain tumor, I'm like, oh no, and
it was 95% mortality in 5 years.
It's insanity, and it's super aggressive. So to see that and just to like, look, it would be remarkable if it made that 5-year mortality go to 10 years.
Well, I mean, that's the dream here, right? Like, the dream is, like, can we get it? Can we do that? And I think the answer is, like, yes. So now,
probably,
Now, just so we can get, our AI out of the way for the day, like, what do you think happens now when you get, now we're at a point where you can basically take that information and put it full bore into an AI and be like, why is this happening? Isolate the why and then triple, quadruple down on the thing.
And literally, like, we've even talked about AI making psychedelics. Hey, we know these are the receptors that light up in the brain. We know this is what it kind of looks like. And AI is kicking out synthetic psychedelics all day. We could do this with drugs and go, like, look, this works pretty good. What works better?
Well, and we've talked about the Parkinson AI a lot on the show, and that's, like, a great example of that, right? Like, that is just volition meets resources, and voila. Like,
and when you remove the human processing time from the equation, infinitely insane.
Yeah. Well, you know what I love about that's actually one of the most intriguing things about AI to me, is that when people get all worked up about losing jobs and everything like that, I'm like, all you're really losing is the shittiest parts of that job.
Well, but like, I mean? Like, that's always funny. Like, oh, you're going to lose all these jobs. It's like, look, McDonald's has automated tellers, and they're not even... like, you have so many people that are like, it's push screen. That was never an AI thing to take away. That is not, you don't need human thought for that.
No.
What do you want? Press the picture.
Yeah, press the picture.
And then it's like, no, you don't understand. Yes, all of those PhDs in that room, we can take all of their research and put it in this little box, and this little box will think like all of them near instantaneously.
Well, and that's just it. When I was doing all the research for the book, a lot of those, the concept of how intuition is defined neurochemically is a really sought after question. Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's not, like, unasked.
Yeah.
And so we pretty much know all the ins and outs of how that happens. And we don't need to go into it here, but, like, basically AI is doing all of those same things. It's just doing it much faster. right? And
Yeah.
so like when you take out all the bullshit that you don't want to do as a human and compound that infinitely with the sum of human knowledge in that's been fed into that machine, you get straight to the good stuff. Like that's where you want to be. If you could just operate from there,
Yeah.
dude.
Well, even look at it. Even if it gives you 100 things that are utter crap, it's going to give you 1,000 things that have some value, possibly a lot of value, more than the current situation. And so why wouldn't you do that?
No, and here's the other thing people aren't talking. And you hit the nail on the head there. So to build on that, what I would say is, smart people now read a book, hear a joke, smell a smell, something hits an idea. And then what happens? Then they take that idea and they go through their brain and they look for any other idea that matches that idea. And they're like, oh, wait, if I take this, I can do this other thing.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. And what ends up happening is eventually you're like, all right, I've got enough of these stitched together. I can go do something. Well, if you're that person and you're smart already in that way, having AI just prime the pump for you just gets you there. Just
give me the top 10 ideas you can come up with.
Yeah,
you know what?
And it's a mixture. You still are going to mix and match those things.
And what fits this situation the best with my human mind, you know?
Right. And this is especially true, I think, when we get into therapy design with AI, because like you definitely, time is absolutely of the essence in that field, right? Like, you know, if you can if you could augment the lifespan of people with some of these things, they want that thing to happen like right now.
Yesterday. Yeah. Before I was diagnosed, I hoped there was a cure, you know?
Yeah.
You know what? And this is crazy because you're mentioning this, and you remember I was all in on that God helmet for a while. I'm circling back to that. But that book that he wrote, the first one, I still got to get the book that he has on deja vu. The way AI sounds is the way that he describes reincarnation as a human evolutionary advantage, right? Like, we're born and it's almost like, not like, oh my God, I was Joan of Arc in a past life, but I come in kind of preloaded with a set of skills that it took people millennia to acquire, right? So like AI is basically that, where we've just fed it all into one central source.
Sure.
And now we're sprinting. So when we're like, you know, everyone says, oh, you know, you hand a kid a phone, doesn't matter if they're 3 years old, they can do more on it than somebody that's 40, you know? And it's like, well, that's kind of weird, but is it because we designed it to be so intuitive, or do they have some weird, like, reincarnated knowledge from like the last time they were in a body, so they don't have to learn everything of the human experience over again? And think about that with AI now. Like, you're going to talk to it like another person. It's going to give you the best answers possible. What is it like? You let a toddler in front of this and they're going to come up with things that we're going to think are miraculous or, you know, life altering.
And you know what is going to be interesting to see? And I don't know where, I mean, right now it's probably not plausible because of what they call like a loop collapse, right? Like if you just keep feeding itself, it will collapse, right? Like you can't.
I mean, it makes sense. Nothing new is going in, right?
Right. You need to keep putting new stuff in, right? So there's like a concern that if AI is training AIs, that it eventually collapses. Now, there's also a ton of arguments that perfectly justify that that's not going to happen. So, like, this is a very murky area.
Well, yeah, you know, it sounds to me like if there's no new data, well, then it just idles.
Yeah, it doesn't really though. Yeah, it does, and then maybe it doesn't. We don't know. Anyway, the point is that it'll be interesting if you look at like somebody like, let's say, Huberman, right?
Yeah.
If at any point Huberman decides to make an LLM out of himself, like in his corpus of,
and he certainly has enough video footage to do so.
Yeah. If he were to create said object, right, and then really intelligently design how the object interacts with other humans through other devices and or the internet, and you had a thing that said, hey, I want to learn everything more about these topics that I already know a little bit about, and I want my digital consciousness to do that for me.
Mm-hmm.
What we've been talking about here is going to happen, right? Like the knowledge that this thing is going to go and acquire based on our rules that we set it is going to continuously feed itself new information. So like, to put this in context, if you were to say, I want to know everything there is to know about the birds in my backyard, right? So, you put in some things like feathers, footprint, song, right? Like how it sounds.
Yeah.
Well, if I give it that and I say, hey, go out and find out all the information you can about feathers for these birds, their song, and, what their footprints are, right? Well, when it's out there doing it, it's going to learn a lot about those things.
Mm-hmm.
Are there deficiencies in this population? Was there a weird genetic mutation, whatever? But it's also going to learn about footprints of other birds, because that's going to
by proxy to be able to,
right.
Then, identify, what other is versus that. Yeah.
And then now, by rules of your AI, your only mandate is to go out and find out more information about anything I know about. Right. And so tomorrow, when you've indexed another 1,000 birds, you now go out and you do 1,000 times however many data points you pull back from that. And now the next day you have 3,000 birds in your memory. Yeah, and then the next day you have 20,000 birds in your memory.
Because it's exponential. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It just keeps going up and up and up. Right. So what I'm like dramatically reducing how hard that is to do. I get that. But it really does feel like the inevitable conclusion of this, and where we are going to be when that happens. I honestly don't think we could ever even ideate around right now. And I think the most impactful places it's going to be is probably health. Like
because that's the absolute quest, right? None of us want to die, right? That's the mortality equation.
Yeah, correct. And it's absolutely that. And actually there's the crazy shit going on with climate, ways to kind of counteract the climate thing. There's a hell of a lot of energy there, because look, the guy who solves that fucking problem is a trillionaire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
I'm so upset that something that would benefit the entire planet has to be profits, for profit.
But you know what?
Yeah.
I had this conversation in the 90s.
Yeah.
Right. Remember when the ozone layer was all the rage?
Yeah. And they're like, don't use Aquanet or something.
It was like and I said, we had this whole thing, and I said, look, the reality is the ozone layer will heal entirely the minute we figure out how to make money off of that process.
Absolutely.
If somebody ever finds that, they win.
Yeah.
There's how much money do you want for this? All of it.
Sure. But it's also going to have to hit that critical mass where like people are actually like dropping dead everywhere before anyone pays attention.
Well, my neighbor won a Nobel Prize, and he was on this, like, anyone who wins a Nobel Prize.
Where do they put it? Do they put it on their mantle?
I don't know.
You've been to his house. Does he have it somewhere? Or is it like out on display?
I think
Does he
it's
just
in his
hang it
office.
around his dick?
No,
just so you know.
I think it was in his office, and I didn't go in there. I was in his little. I was in his kitchen and hanging out. I hang out in the social areas, not his office.
You're not allowed back there. That's where the real scientists.
I mean, listen, just putting myself imaginarily in his shoes, like, I think I would, in order to maintain that level of cognitive horsepower, I think I would need a space that was entirely cut off from the world.
Like a panic room. You just go in there.
I would need to really truly be 100% isolated. Like I would not.
And I would never do another thing. I would Flavor Flav watch that shit.
Oh yeah.
I'd be like, yo, man, how about a free round for the
the
Nobel Prize winner?
Yeah, it's really funny.
Did I mention I have a Nobel laureate?
Yeah. But like they're in this. They signed this petition a couple years back around some guy figured out a way to scrub the carbon dioxide out of the air and then inject it into the seafloor in the ocean. And somehow, some way, I believe it ended up making coral out of the additional CO2. Now,
wow.
Part of what I just said is for sure true. I'm sure I mixed up a bunch of that, but
there's a couple of steps in the middle there.
But the point is nobody was taking it seriously, and a bunch of them signed this thing and said, take this seriously. And that same thing, nobody's going to take it seriously until somebody knows how to sell those CO2 credits.
Yeah.
Like, and if you can basically, I mean, that's. As soon as a government says, I'm going to pay you to harvest CO2, dude, there will be CO2 farms popping up fucking
everywhere.
Like they will be everywhere.
You know what does it really good? Trees.
No, I get, yeah. But I think at this point we need so many trees.
You need all of the rainforests to be back.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think you basically can't get to that many trees.
Not unless funny. You reduce human population and have more room for trees.
One of the guys who somebody forwarded me one time that was like against the EPA under a Democrat. So he's some crazy, conspiracy theory guy. But he was basically saying we can't get rid of carbon dioxide. CO2 is not bad. If we got rid of the high carbon, all the trees would die and we would get hot and blah, blah, blah. It was like this dumb, like kindergarten.
Yeah, like you don't know science, bro.
I was like, wow, that's remarkable in its stupidity, but okay. And I'm like sitting there going, man, there's how many people out there believe that like global warming is actually good, helping the trees.
It's like that guy that there was a senator that said something like, well, if we put up all these windmills, we're not gonna have wind anymore.
Yeah.
And it was like, do you even
do you hear yourself, you fucking idiot?
The one that really fucking kills me though, and this is not to get political, but these are the people that are running the country, right? So they have a doctor, and she's sitting there and they're either doing this abortion debate, and the guy goes, so we got this pill, right, that somebody can take and it can look inside their stomach. And she goes, yeah, that's a thing, right? It's a camera that you swallow and it'll show the intestinal tract and we can see lesions and things like that. And his next question was, well, why can't we do that in pregnant women to see the baby? And you saw this doctor, she's got to, first of all, she's got to be like, if she's in front of Congress, she's got to be A-list doctors, right? Of the doctors, she's got to be the doctor of doctors.
Sure.
And I felt her spirit break in this video clip. I was like, she was like, that was like literally the dumbest thing she's ever heard of.
Hilarious. Yeah, but
and she has to she has to take a second, compose herself.
Sure.
And say, those aren't connected.
Yeah.
The baby is not in the woman's stomach.
Yeah.
I'm sure you grew up hearing mommy has a baby in her belly.
Yeah, but that's no.
That is a 3-year-old explanation.
Yeah.
And I'm like going, this fucking doctor. She's busted her ass. She's a female. She's black. She's hopped over 50,000 more obstacles than every other doctor. She's appearing in front of Congress, and she gets asked the stupidest question she's ever been asked in her entire life.
Yeah,
and it is a big, fat, old white male. And it's like, Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah.
This is where we're at. Nah, we had a good run.
Yeah. Well, this is why, I mean, here's another argument why having AI isn't maybe a terrible thing, because now you could have, instead of some fucking giant old asshole, you can just say, hey, look, here are our rules for society. Now let's figure out how to like stay right where we need to. Then it's, you know, I don't know. Just back to that though, in the health side, like I think what I'm psyched about is this story about the glioblastoma stuff. Really came, I think it's coming out at a great time to really kind of give people sort of like oomph to keep putting resources behind this way of thinking, right? Like,
well, yeah, you know, I mean, they'll like, if given the opportunity, basic research would be not funded ever. Yeah, you know, and then we lose all of these things, right? So yeah, some of it's weird. Like, you know, what do I care if cats lose X number of hairs a year, right? But on the other hand, you get stuff like this where it's like this has actual amazing impact on society.
Sure. Yeah. And yeah, so I mean, I love that. What else? Hold on, what was the other one? There was another one that we just recently saw. Fuck. It also had me thinking like super cool shit. It was about those. Oh fuck.
Was it the water? Now I'm going to go to our website.
Yeah, it was the fleas. Yeah,
the water fleas. Yeah. Massive, fast evolution.
So like, we just spent all this time talking about AI, right? And we're oh, this is the next frontier. This is crazy, like AI, computer, blah, 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 right? And then here we have shit on our own planet that's living, breathing, whatever, and that we still doesn't
make any sense.
Anything about we don't know hardly shit, I feel like, about our planet. We're just learning new shit every day. And
I remember when everyone was talking about octopuses or octopi. I think both are acceptable. And they're like, no, it's got alien DNA. And we're just like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't blow anybody's mind. You don't have to sit there and like, I got to go outside and take a second for that one. Like that should fuck you up, man.
Yeah. I think there was these like water fleas, right? That because like they were adapting to the environment that was changing.
The extremes. Yeah.
And they were just changing, they were changing like in like one or couple generations.
Because they don't even need sexual reproduction, right? They just reproduce on their own.
So is the sexual reproduction thing, is that the thing you think that makes that possible? Like, because basically you don't have to wait.
I think we're looking at altered DNA within one organism that then has offspring. You don't have to worry. You don't have to, when you have two sets coming together,
right. It's
in that diploid
match
kind of thing, you have to have the right mutation that'll keep you alive, but won't lead to something that's non-viable. I'm going to end up having to get new headphones, man. These are fucking driving me nuts. But anyway, I thought I fixed them yesterday. But within that, like now it's one generation to the next can be different, right? So if there is a mutation, that offspring is either viable or not. And every other thing that's reproducing within that is just going. Yeah. So it also probably has something to do with the, like clearly they're not single cell, but they're small organisms. They probably don't have a long genetic code, so they can reproduce quicker. Those changes are more impactful, and any one that's not viable, it's just, you just lost that one in that particular generation. You didn't lose the whole species.
Yeah. And so that's kind of interesting, because when we get into like the next evolution of kidding, right? You know, like progeny, very, very, very likely that we're going to be designing our own.
At the very least, deselecting undesirable traits or mutations.
At a minimum,
yeah.
Right, like at an absolute minimum.
Like, so hey, we can get rid of trisomy 21. We can make sure you don't have these genetic risks and alter that, you know, in utero, which will be kind of crazy.
No,
or
totally. And
maybe infertility even.
And it's interesting to me that like when we find shit like this out, right? Like, so here we have an animal whose prime directive is survival, like you were saying, right?
I mean, that's everything. That's every animal. Reproduce and have offspring.
Right. And so like all you got to do is survive. So all they're doing is like, I mean, they are fucking ninjas at it. And that's why I asked about the sexual reproduction part, because as you were kind of talking through that, I'm like, yeah, you know what? That makes actually a lot of sense. Like if I try something new and it doesn't work, well, that's the end of it.
and you're fucked, right? You know?
Yeah.
But if you think that has a reproduction where like that one generation to the next, that individual might be reproducing 1,000, 2,000 things. And if they're all slightly different, that gives you genetic variability. And if some of them don't make it, who cares? You know, you still have, you know, like, and even humans kind of did this at one point, right? Like going back a couple of generations. I mean, think back to your grandparents or your great grandparents, and they're like, oh, we had 12 kids. You know, I grew up and there was 12 in my household. And it's like, well, because, you know, statistically, most of you weren't going to make it. You know, and then every generation, as infant mortality falls, people are like, you know, like, maybe I want to be able to go to the golf course. And you know what's going to make that impossible? 12 fucking kids.
Yeah, 12
Let's have
kids.
2.
Yeah.
More than likely, they'll both make it to adulthood.
Yeah. And no, and that all, I mean, again, wow, this can get real dark here, actually.
I mean, you know, like science is pretty dark sometimes, you know.
Well, no, I just had like a really dark thought. I mean, what if you have a kid, you design a kid. I want it to be 6'1". I want him to be blah, blah, blah. And cracks his head open on a diving board at 6 years old and he's gone, right?
Yeah.
Do you print another one at that point? Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, not print as in where you left off, but like you could theoretically restart.
Make a new one, give them the same name. That's pretty fucked up. There's, have you know, Adult Swim on Comedy Central. Yeah. They had a show called The Venture Brothers, which was like a take on like a weird Johnny Quest kind of thing.
Right.
But you know, the grandfather who you see videos of was this famous inventor, and then his son is kind of just this like shitty little angry little thing that really can't get anything done. But he has 2 kids. He has 2 sons, and they're fucking idiots. I mean, it's funny, but they always die. And the first time they die, everybody's really upset, and the dad's like, I guess I'll go print 2 more. Yeah. And then in later episodes, they reference in the dad's subconscious, he has all of these dead kids running around in his subconscious that he had to reprint. And he's like, no, we just give them their memories and they don't even remember this. And you know, it's basically, but it's like a goofy thing. And it's like, God, man, what you described is not that far off of that, right? You know, like you might not be able to, like, we did all that shit on upload, and what if you could put all your memories in? But
I mean, but like, so I don't know, it's cool. It's unfortunately, again, we go back to the commercial aspect of this, right? Like the reason why this is tragic isn't because it's not interesting. It's super fascinating, but I know what happens is there's an industry that's going to get born out of that, where people are like full on, you know, picking their kids, and we basically don't need genetic variability. So because reproduction and sustaining life is not.
That is one thing I think and maybe AI is going to shift this too. But you know, if you read any book on epigenetics, we're nowhere near there yet, right? And that's why like clones like Dolly just don't live long, because those little footnotes, which are the epigenetics, this switches on, this switches off, is like, you know, it's like actors writing in their script these little notes, you know, like, oh, when I say this, I'm going to do that. When I say this, you know, when this comes out, that if that's missing, it's almost like, they're reading the lines, but there's nothing to it, right? And it makes it genetically weak. So we don't have that all figured out. We don't know what group needs to be methylated. We don't know what group needs this. We don't know what group needs that. And until we have that down to a science, we could give somebody all of those genes and they're not going to be there. They'll be born. How viable they'll be, how much they'll be able to live is like super weird. And yeah, I think AI could help speed that up. Yeah, absolutely. Do I think it's possible in our lifetime? Yeah, but I don't think we're there yet.
No, but even if you just take like, so that's actually like a few steps further than what I was talking about. But what I was talking about was more like, you know,
just having
my
an
wife
exact
and
copy
I
be born.
Yeah, my wife and I want to have a baby.
Yeah.
We want to have a boy and a girl. We want them to be 2 years apart. So, you know, we're going to make them at the same time here. You know, my sperm, her egg, and that combination is going to happen no matter what. But at the genetic level, we're going to turn this switch off, turn this switch on, you know, and we're going to make them 6'1". We're going to make them, you know, 15% body fat at max. We're going to do all these things, and then we're going to spit out a kid. And, you know, I don't know. I don't think you need genetic variation in that existence, because the two people that spawned it are still two humans,
and they still have those
epigenetics.
Yeah.
All you're doing is making sure that what comes out is the perfectest version of it.
In a real, like, let's say less sophisticated way, because this happens a lot in the clinic. We see a lot of fertility, and sometimes it's like it's two women. Right. So they'll go to the sperm bank and they'll say, well, this is what my partner looks like. Let me find a male that has similar characteristics. So if they're Latino, they're going to choose a Latino bloodline. They're about this height. They're into these things. And, you know, even like, I think there was a documentary on Netflix or something where like the guy had like 600 kids, because here's this like PhD level, you know, blonde hair, blue eyed, all American, you know, 2% body fat, you know, genius IQ dude. And like, that's some top shelf sperm right there. So people are going in and they're like, I want that one. That one's going to be a NASA scientist. I want that one.
I mean, we do that shit with horses. Why the hell wouldn't we do it with ourselves, right?
I mean, that's the crazy thing, right? Even when a racehorse retires, if they have a real winning streak, they're more valuable as a stud than they ever were racing.
Sure. Yeah. And you know, that's, I mean, dude, we can make this a real dark tunnel, actually. I mean, like, then you get into like, well, actually, we could skip the dark tunnel, because honestly, you would need to manufacture like top shelf, because you're already cutting out all the bad stuff anyway. So like, really, when you're at that level,
I mean, if you can get the genetic diseases out of the way, that's a huge, just even
that's most of it. Yeah, that's most of it.
You know, like, and you don't want the dumbass picking his nose in the corner either. But you know,
sure,
there's probably going to be like, no, these things make, and I think that's an evolutionary drive too, right? You know, we have this concept of beauty, we have this concept of attractiveness, and that's, even though that's different for all of us, I think if we all like were shown photos, is this person more attractive than that person? In most cases, we might like all as a group select the same people. But now even that, like, there's weird studies where, God, we got to find this one. Maybe we need a boob expert too, on top of a poop expert. But they were saying that, like, if people are looking for settling down, like men, let's talk about men here, straight cis men. If a woman has small breasts, they're more likely to date them for like sex. But if they're looking to settle down and get married, they tend to choose larger breasted people, because that biologically looks like a better candidate for raising children.
Yeah, and it's funny that we're that basic, but we really are.
You know, I mean, it's I think Sir Mix-a-Lot had it right.
But like, you know, the example you gave for cis men is accurate, but I think that the analog holds true with anything, right? Like, if you take any gay, lesbian, whatever version of humanity you're talking about,
that specific population probably has once in
has a yardstick that all of the people in that demo would be like,
and that changes with the culture, that changes with the time, that changes with the geographic location. But I think a lot of those things are natural factors that are selected, right? I mean, when we had Stefan on talking about Sense8, and he's like, look, we used to be out in the woods, and when the birds changed their song, we knew shit was up.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes so much sense, right? So,
which, by the way, how fucking mind-blowing is that? Like, I mean, come on.
But doesn't it make so much sense? And we're like,
much sense.
Now we sit in the office and we're like, is the HVAC sounding a little off? It's like, am I in danger? No,
totally.
You need service. But it's such a weird thing that we've unhumanized ourselves so much. We've unanimaled ourselves so much, and yet we can't escape it, man. I gotta say, I'm on day 2 of the yellow light bulbs. I told you that the other day.
Oh yeah.
And I swear to God, my family slept better last night.
That's
like,
so
funny. Both my kids came down and bitched about it. They're like, my blue dress looks green. I'm like, the bathroom lights are normal.
Yeah.
Like, go in there. I left those for you, for makeup, for getting dressed, all that stuff. But do not. Well, sleep. I want the old bulbs back. No. Why? Because you're all assholes.
Yeah.
And this might make you not assholes.
Yeah. Right. Mine are, that's what I had a package delivered today. That's exactly what that is. It's my Sora.
I'm telling you, man. I was excited, and I tried to buy like an off-brand, and I looked at them and I'm like, no, these are regular LEDs with the yellow coating. And then I went and I looked at the manufacturer and everything. I'm like, nope, these are legit. Because they just look like white bulbs. But they are definitely amber. My wife goes, it feels like we have a fireplace lit, but brighter. And I'm like, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's
exactly.
Cool. I am psyched to see. I'm not going to tell my kids that I did it. I'm just.
Oh, they will know. They will know.
Yeah.
The house is yellowish. Yeah.
Is it okay? Well, we have incandescent. I have really low Kelvin lights in already, so I'm not really.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know that they would know. Like, I'm real bitchy about that. That's why I was asking him about Kelvins, and I was interested in his answer that it wasn't a good indicator.
Yeah, because that's more the temperature of the light that we ascribe it, but it's not the wavelength frequency.
No, but here's what I thought was a little weird, though, is because he did say, like, more or less it's under 2,700, and I'm like, all right, so it does have a correlation. It's not.
But it's But I think his thing might have been like, no blue is very different from a lower Kelvin.
I get. I get that. I guess what I'm saying is, like, I have, like, 2,500 Kelvin or 3,000 Kelvin lights in pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
So I'm like real close to that. And I like that. I don't know if it's because I don't know if, to me, like, a family room in a house, to put like one of these obnoxious CFL bulbs in there or something, like, I was like, fuck absolutely all of that.
Well, you know what? It's funny where, my wife, I don't know if she doesn't believe that we're all ADHD or she just is looking for some camaraderie, but she shared this video of a dude, I think, talking about his wife. They're all ADHD in his family too, but they were saying, like, basically, like, we don't put on the big light. And what the big light is if you have ADHD. It's that bright ass overhead one,
Sure. Yeah.
No one likes it. Why? It's too bright. And I'm wondering if it's because the big light has a fucking gigantic, bluer than the blue light coming from the sunlight,
Yeah.
Because, my wife had the lights on and she's watching TV, and normally that's a no-no in the house. And she didn't say a damn thing about it. And I didn't mention it. Like, I'm just going to sit here and take notes and do some research.
Yeah.
You're all part of an experiment.
Well, so what I've realized, though, is over the last year or so, as I'm trying these things, they kind of all sort of feel like they're not going to do anything because they're not big things. Like, a light bulb is still a light bulb, right? You're like, how much could that possibly matter?
Well, I think the thing that
It
got me,
matters.
and it was shock value, right? So I started reading the Light Doctor book, right? And the first thing is he's showing an emergency room type scene. This woman is like a night surgeon at Sinai or some big hospital, and she gets breast cancer. And they traced it back to the fluorescent lighting in the hospital. So literally, she goes home and she sleeps, but her circadian rhythm is 12 hours off. She's under stress and she's bathing in like the brightest spectrum of blue lights, because not only is she walking the halls of a hospital, she is then in a surgery ward where you need it to be that bright so you can see those things.
Right.
Now, were there other contributing factors? Stress, lifestyle, microplastics, environmental pollutants? Hell yes. But the one thing that could be easy enough to fix could be the light,
I feel like that's. Do you know how they trace that back though?
I like honestly, I'm reading like 6 books at once.
Oh, right.
And I was like 5 pages in and I'm like, oh, this is great. And then, my kid asked me something and then I'm like, all right, I got to go do that. So I got to get back to that. And maybe there's some sensationalism, right? He's got to sell books. But the dude that discovered the part of the brain that controls circadian rhythms, I mean, that seems like a big discovery.
No, it's huge. But like what my point is, it's not something that comes out as like immediately like, oh, it's not like you go running, right? Okay, if I start running and I hadn't been running before and I do it for a week or two, like I'm probably going to feel better about running. And eventually I'm going to start to like lose weight. Like,
see physical changes. Yeah.
That's all like very logical, right? Like when you say to somebody, okay, so this light bulb in your room is killing you. Like that's not logical.
Well,
like
look,
nothing
man,
about that. Nothing about that is logical.
Given the amount of research he's done over the years, and that circadian rhythm
I'm
society.
Not saying he's not wrong.
But like, even think about it. Even at some point, cigarettes.
No, totally.
9 out of 10 doctors choose. I don't know, Virginia Slims. Yeah. Sure. It's like, and now it's like, no, those things fucking kill you. We've known all along, and those fringe people, like here's a Harvard MD. He is not screaming. He's not wearing a tinfoil hat. He's coming with research. And it wasn't the, oh my God, this is going to kill you. But yes, it can definitely impact your health, right? I mean, there's plenty of people that smoked until they died and smoking wasn't what killed them. But given the big enough sample group, a lot of people died from, smoking related things.
But like, I mean, sitting on that Beamer mat, man, I fucking love that thing. And
you're going to make me buy one.
Dude, the thing is fucking magic, right? But guess what happens? Absolutely fucking nothing. Like
you're just sitting there. You're
just sitting there like nothing. And yet everything is happening. Like,
it's so weird, man. I get it.
And other stuff like, look, in the wintertime, we're basically, cruising into winter now.
Yeah.
And guess what? Next month, when I start up the red light routine again, I 100% will tell you that sort of seasonal affective disorder stuff doesn't fucking happen anymore. Like I just don't. Yeah. It doesn't happen.
Even at the clinic that happens. Even with the red light, they're like, "What do you feel?" I'm like, "Better." And I wish I could quantify that. I don't know. Like, is it, I can't say you're like 70% happier or like your body's running this much better, but like.
But again, it's like one of those things, like it doesn't, that effect of like go running and you'll get thinner. Like it's nothing. It's invisible. It's like, I felt nothing, but I felt everything. It's like very cool to me how that works. Yeah. Dude, one thing I can't believe we haven't brought up yet, the fucking blue zone shit.
You thought I was fucking with you, didn't you?
Dude,
you thought I was fucking
serious?
with you. I was like, dude, this TikTok woman is saying there's this scientist out there debunking. You're like, yeah, fuck you.
Fuck you.
And then I was like, no, dude, here.
No, and like, dude, that is some fucking next level shit.
Like, imagine that shit. That motherfucker sold so many books, and I don't even think he was trying to defraud people. And I'm not even saying that this other guy is right, but this idea that like hey, in Japan, in Okinawa, where people live over 100 regularly, hey, did you know in World War II, the records were kind of lost mysteriously after we dropped 2 giant fucking bombs on Japan?
Right.
Hey,
Yeah.
you know why people said they were older? To get pensions.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's everything
and that sounds,
you think the problem would be.
Oh my God. That sounded, when they said the pension fraud, I'm like, I feel like, was that in Italy? I feel like that was like, that dude, sounds like something my family might try. So I had an aunt that took 20 years off her age just so she could keep working.
Oh, that's so funny. So Costa Rica's got that same thing, right? Like Costa Rica, Nicoya's got one of the blue zones.
Yeah.
And guess what? They get a lot of tourism there because of that. Like that is
they don't want to lose that. Don't debunk this. But like literally, let's see your records. Oh, we don't have them. So you're just saying that woman that says she's 107 is 107? Yeah. It's like, oh my God. I mean, that one I sent you for shits and giggles, but like, So what my immediate question there wasn't what I thought it was going to be, right? My knee-jerk reaction was, well, how off are they? And that's one thing the article really didn't go into. I don't know if you picked up on that. I mean, I think I sent you 2 or 3 of them, and they all seem to be saying the same thing. Like they all read the same stories, right, but that wasn't concluded. But that's the thing. Like, even if they said, hey, they're off by 20 years, that's still a pretty old population. Well, that's my point. Is it 20 years or is it 50 years? Right? Like, I don't know. Yeah. If you're claiming to be 107 and you're like 60 something, bro, you look like shit. Yeah. Like, Well, and that, what's funny with it, actually, that one, was somewhere in the article you wrote me, they were like, the guy, that's what it was. The guy was saying, he's like, it's just a ton of misinterpreted facts. And he goes, here's one for you. The cover has a sweet potato on it. And it talks about blue zones. Well, in the most thorough nutritional study on the planet that goes back to 1975, everybody in Japan is studied in this fucking thing, apparently. And I don't know if it's everybody, but it seems to be most of them. Okinawa's they eat the least. Yeah. Like, and so he goes, who the fuck told these people that the potato had anything whatsoever to do with the metrics here? Because the people you're studying don't even fucking eat it. So, but you're so confused about this that you put that as the core image. And I'm sitting there laughing my ass off because I'm like, I wish I could have this guy on the show because he seems like my kind of interview. He seems pretty snarky. All right, man. I'm gonna pitch him. Yeah, like I'm sitting here going, like, why? Like, we got to talk with this motherfucker. Like, he sounds amazing. Like, well, but I think that's the thing, right? I mean, the story is so compelling. Oh my God, the desire to live a long, healthy life is so strong. And how do we know it's not fucking Jack and cocaine? And it's just like all the rock stars just went a little too hard. Yeah. Well, like, here's the question. Keith Richards figured it out. Yeah. It's like, and Keith Richards is going to outlive everybody. Like, I think there was an episode of The Simpsons where they say Mr. Burns has the right amount of drugs and diseases that are all balancing each other out. That's so funny. And I was like, look, that sounds crazy, but yeah. But like, so in a very, very, very circuitous way, debunking that would really, really sort of put a spear right through the center of what spawned everything we talk about on the show almost, right? Like, basically every reason in the world to be healthy stems from the hope that you could be one of those fucking people. Yeah. Yeah. How many books have been written about this? How many diets are out there? How many billions of dollars in studies? Well, look, man, I was when I was going through one of our podcasts, you actually said it was like, look, the way to get famous is to write your diet book. And you then said something about not just making it lose weight, or it's got to say, look, it's going to have this impact on your like lifespan and health and stuff too. And it's like, it's funny, but that's true. And you know, our buddy Dr. Dave on LinkedIn the other day, he shared some data. And he said, look, here's all the reports on all of these longevity studies, right? And he's got this graph, and it's like, it's got the rapamycin, it's got the fasting, it's got, you know, the berberine, it's got, you know, the low A1C. Everybody's dying. You know, it's like, we're not so good at it, right? So that thing that we think is the magic bullet, maybe not. Now,
well, so are those people having any? I mean, it's hard because you don't have a duplicate of yourself.
Well, and that's the thing, right? You can't, you can't say, like, look, if you're supposed to drop dead at 50, and now all of a sudden you do something and you live to 75, well, you've added 50% lifespan.
Sure.
You know, so that's fucking impressive.
Sure.
But
you would never know.
You would never know because we don't know, like there's not a way to look at your genes and go like, look, if you don't get hit by a bus.
Right. You got
here's what you're looking at.
72.6 years. Yeah. Right.
God, that would be fucking horrible, right? If you came out and you're like, hey man,
who would want to do, who would ever want to do that? Right. Like, no, absolutely not. But like, but what I'd want to know, and I saw that as well, and I'm like, what I'm curious about is like, okay, what about health span inside of that lifespan, right? Because like, I think now we're starting to see a lot more people,
right? Yeah,
right. Well, you start to see people now talking a lot more about health span, right? Like that, and that's sort of like the new sort of not new, but it is a resurging buzzword, right? Like, and so, and most regular folks don't really understand the difference between health span and lifespan. And most people would actually hear health span and think lifespan. But, you know, I'd be curious, like, how much health span does doing that give you? And rapamycin and some of those other iacins, right? Like, they also give people, I know, like other benefits that make living much more fun. Like,
and I'm not saying not to do it if you do your research and you understand how to do it, and you're in those groups that they discuss that. But also, like, let's face it, I'm sure a lot of people have fucked that up, right? You hear a lot about the side effects and everything. Oh, I took a little bit too much too fast. Sure. Or I didn't follow the schedule right, or something like that. It's so interesting to me that, you know, it's no different. And I think the biohacking community is really just like the makeup artist community for tech bros.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, how can I look better? How can I fuck harder? How can I, and like women are like, how can I be more attractive? It's the same thing. It's such a weird thing, but you know, getting back to that human nature, oh shit, I'm going to die. Right. I mean, God, we've had so many conversations about that.
Right. No, I absolutely. Well, and that's why I'm like, you know, it's funny because one of my other fun reactions that I was laughing at myself about was I read both of these articles real short amount of time. Right. So now we get on one side, we find out that up to now, we had to lie about blue zones to make everybody believe that the blue zone was possible and chase trillions of dollars of, you know, gold to go try to live 10, 20, 30% longer.
Yeah.
And on the other side, once you find out that that was kind of mostly bullshit, you're like, well, thank God AI's here. So
yeah, now, so somebody can be rational.
so we can now all we're doing is hitching our stars to yet another wagon.
Yeah.
But we're not necessarily in a different position, because I'll bet you everyone 40 years ago was just as optimistic as we are now.
But I mean, like look back to the 80s when they're like, no, you just got to drink sugar-free soda.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, saccharin kills you. And then like, now you're seeing some people interpreting data, and they're like, look, it's not as bad as you think it is. And then other people are like, artificial sweeteners are going to give you cancer. And like, the researchers are like, guys, like, I get it. It's not natural, but we're not seeing it to those degrees. And then like, I think I told you, I got a guy that taught me in acupuncture school. He taught me a business class. It was 100% bullshit. He's a huge anti-vaxxer, and he's like, he's gone so far off the other end of the spectrum where it's like, you're supporting the guy that is literally lying right now. And you can't see that. Oh, no, because he's not going to make me put something in my, I'm like, do you fucking believe that? Like, he will line you up and shoot you if you disagree with him.
Oh yeah.
So it's only a matter of time. But I'm, here I am. I look healthier than you, and I'm drinking mezcal right out of the fucking bottle.
Right out
bro.
of the bottle.
And
so
Mom,
what are you up
Dad,
to, man?
There was only a little bit in this. There wasn't.
There was.
there was like one drink in this. Look, man, I think you met my digital media manager the other day, and she's convinced me to pitch a TEDx talk.
Oh, cool. That'd be awesome.
So I wrote one. Full disclosure, I had AI go through and go like, what would make this more compelling?
Sure, of course.
And I'm going to pitch it for 2025 at a couple of locations around Baltimore. There's one at Westminster, there's one in Rockville, and then I think the one I'm really going to shoot for is Wilmington, Delaware, because it gives me more time to prepare. Right.
What is there like a formula for pitching that kind of stuff?
So I like each place, because they're independent. They're like offshoots of TED. Like, I'm not playing the game where TED's going to be like, yeah, come talk. But the TEDx stuff are like these independent ones. So they all have a different format. They all have a different application. But I read Talk Like TED, and like the guy basically, when the book was written, took every TED Talk and looked at the common themes, how long they were, the pacing of how they spoke, even the slides. Like, look, you want this many slides. You don't want more than a couple of words on each one. You want an impactful photo. Here's how you hold your body. Here's how you move around the stage. And this all makes a great one. And then, of course, he talks about, Bill Gates releasing mosquitoes in the room, because that was like so impactful, right? So these impactful things. So I think I came up with something pretty good. I think my avenue is the value of traditional therapies. I wrote a book on cupping. I do acupuncture. Sure. If I was out there talking about stem cell research, could I do it? Probably, but it doesn't seem to fit my quote unquote brand.
It doesn't.
But I think it might be a fun little swing. And if I don't get it, awesome. I'll wait until 2026 and see what happens. I mean, what have you been into, man?
Well, I'm, continuing my AI journey. I
can't wait until the world sees it, man. I gotta say, without disclosing too much, what you showed me was, it blew my fucking mind.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm having a lot of fun doing it, and I think really every day I think I get a really cool opportunity to sort of sharpen my wit, as it were, around this topic, right? Because it's a really dense topic, right? Like, forget
absolutely.
About there's just so much to sort of consider in it, and actually, I was talking with somebody the other day about, I said, a real fluent person in this category, I've realized is having to do intra-life epigenetic thought process shift in order to think about AI the right way, right?
Well, it seems to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like you're interacting with another intelligence.
So sort of, I actually don't feel like that anymore.
Okay.
You know how I feel now? I feel like you're not. Remember we talked about earlier in the show about like how intuition is defined and how people come up with, aha moments and stuff like this, right? all those things is an alignment of a whole bunch of things that happened all at once or over decades or a whole lifetime that you were able to finally stitch together into a new idea. And people bitch and moan about like, well, AI is not giving us anything new because all they're doing is recycling it. And I said, well, not really, because what they're doing is they're actually dumb. They're really, really, really dumb. What they are great at is they're very fast and they have infinite capacity to connect data together because of that speed. So like imagine, so now the way I look at it is they're not actually a whole lot worse than humans. They're also not a whole lot better than humans, because let's say you feed it a bunch of data and it comes out with a really cool answer. It might not have never been done before, but what AI is doing is it's predicting the next token, right? So it's saying, out of all the times this has happened, here's what I think should happen next or is going to happen next. And that's what you see. That's how we think. Like we think the same way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's basically, I think that their advantage is not intelligence. I think their advantage is speed and recall, right? Like they can do this much, much faster. If you and I sat here for 5 hours, we can solve a complex problem. If we sat here for 35 hours, we can solve a really complex problem. But if you had an AI doing that 35 hours of work, we can solve that same problem in an hour.
Of an eye. Yeah.
Right. Like, and so I think that basically, but here's the thing, I can't solve it in one prompt. And I think this is where everyone goes wrong, right? Like you can't solve it in one prompt, but somebody who's really fluid in this and has adapted their thought process to think like these AIs do, their solve in their brain is already 1,000 prompts in your mind. You're like, I'll get there, but it should take me hundreds of prompts.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh my God, that sounds exhausting. I'm like, well, it's not really. It's
kind of how you think. Yeah.
It's the new way to problem solve. That's all this is. Like, it's not, you know what I mean? Like, so they're like, oh, you can't just rely on AI. I'm like, well, I'm certainly not relying on AI. What I'm doing is learning to think like it so that I can be like, how does AI help me actually fucking progress?
And it's not so much the AI thinking on its own, it's you knowing the right prompts to get through those steps.
And actually, I'd even push back on that. I don't even think it's about knowing the right anything. It's about knowing what the next right thing is. So here's where I think we are just like the AI. I'm also trying to pick the next best token, right? Like, so I'm like,
so you put the wrong thing in and then you got to go back and no, I got to ask this differently, or I got to say this differently. Yeah.
Right. So like, basically I'm doing the exact same thing that the AI is doing. I'm like, given the information I have at right this exact moment in time, I predict that the next best question is this. And that's what the next prompt is. So people get tied up and people have made fortunes selling prompt books and stuff, right? Courses on how to do prompt engineering, even the word prompt engineering, which I do love a lot, actually. And I think is really appropriate for what it is. But I hate the fucking tech bro who uses it. I just kind of don't love that way. But
yeah,
but
and it's funny because there's, with your background in fine arts, there is, as scientific as it is, there is a creative process in that, right? Like I have to word this exactly the right way to get the outcome that I want, and I think that's really cool too.
Yeah. But here's the thing though, it's very different than thinking about analog problems to solve, right? Like, and so I just think it's very fun. And I'm like psyched. That's why every time these articles come out, I'm like instantly interested because I'm like, I can see where they went with that. And what if they applied this other thing to here? It would be fucking killer, and so that's what I'm up to. So
that's awesome, man.
Cool, man. Awesome. Well, I'm psyched. We got a good one tomorrow. So
we do.
We'll be 1-2 this week. So
back at it again.
Cool, man. I'll check you next time.
Sweet, man. Talk to you soon.
Later.
be subversive, irreverent.
Health is wealth, but you knew that.
Everybody knows that.
But so is following us on social media at Irreverent Health. And check out our website for more exclusive content at irreverenthealth.com.
Oh, I like this.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Irreverent Health.